Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and knock this out. All right, first question. Along with strength and cardiovascular conditioning, can a person train their work capacity? Like how long they can put physical work in, whether it be training or likewise, without getting tired? Well, it's not necessarily without getting tired. I mean, you're always going to get tired, even if you're putting work in, right? If you're putting in a lot of work, you're going to feel fatigue. So is work capacity trainable? Yeah, absolutely. Work capacity is trainable in the gym. Work capacity is trainable with general physical preparedness. Of course it is. It's like strength stamina, right? And in other words, high set training. High set training. Because it's not just about reps. Reps help too. You know, you increase work capacity by doing a bunch of smaller high rep stuff at the end of a workout. You can increase work capacity by doing higher volumes of training in general. Right, that will carry over to work capacity as you think of it. It's also where GPP fits in. I mean, and that's actually what we call being in shape, right? Step away from the goofy bodybuilding paradigm that everyone wants to throw into fitness. You can be in shape and be 30% body fat. You can be completely out of shape and be 8% body fat, right? That has nothing to do with being in shape. Work capacity is being in shape, right? How much work can you do before your strength completely fades? Not about feeling tired, it's can you still perform? Can you still perform? And yeah, work capacity is totally trainable. And that's what we call being in shape, particularly for a lifter. A lifter who's in shape can come in and do a pretty hefty amount of volume. A lifter who's in shape can do more workload density too. And a lot of that's developed through your higher volumes of training. That's developed through your general physical preparedness. Right? Doing some sled drags and some kettlebell swings in between your higher volumes of training. And I don't mean between sets. I mean between workouts. Stuff like that can go a real long way. Right? That's your conditioning. Work capacity and conditioning are to some extent largely overlapped. There's an enormous overlap between them. So yeah, it's totally trainable when you think of it in those terms. All right, next question. Hey Jason, will you be able to work up to pulling 4 45-pound plates on the weighted pull-ups by next June of 2020? I don't set goals that specific on anything. So kind of funny question. No, my strength numbers are not that specific on any lift that in June of 2020 I'm going to hit X amount of weight. My goal is to get as strong as possible. How's that? Because the problem is when you set specific goals without having a proper context for them, you can either end up being very disappointed when you don't reach them, or you could end up limiting yourself, meaning you might say, well, I want to squat 500 pounds by this day, and then you put everything into squatting 500 pounds, and you might have been strong enough to get to 530. It's like, I'm not going to do that. But as far as my strength goals go, everything in my strength goals is geared towards my big 3 at this point. I've done a lot of just general strength training. I've spent a lot of time getting good at chin-ups, a lot of time getting good at the press. Right now, any strength standard I set on a lift is going to be because that lift is going to make me bigger or stronger or fill in a weak link on my big 3. Right? That's it. That's it. And any of my max stuff now is some variation of the big 3 that's going to carry over to them. So I don't really set strength goals outside of the context of doing that, because that's the direction my training is easing back into, is towards powerlifting. Now, we need to be generally strong, right? You don't want to have any weak links. But I'm not personally setting strength standards for myself outside of that, because I think that's just fine as a proxy for strength. And it doesn't mean I'm not doing a lot of different movements, because I don't want any weak links in my strength anywhere. But I'm not going to set goals like that at this point. For non-contested lifts right now, I'm not setting 1 rep max standards on them at this point, for me personally, because it's not necessary and it's not conducive to my goals. It's not to say I won't work some weighted pull-ups back in and do a bunch of volume with them, but that would be to serve a different end. That wouldn't be the goal in and of itself. Just like I say, hey, I've got a goal on the JM press to rep sets of 10 with a full plate aside, right? No, it's because it will help my bench press. Same thing, I can set goals on the incline bench. Not because I care about the incline bench, but because it will carry over to my real contested lifts if it addresses a weak link. All right, so we do want to be generally strong. It's a real good idea. But no, I don't have any specific goals like that on lifts like that. All right, next question. Is there any way to tell if your muscles are done with the muscle protein synthesis, or is it just a guessing game? It's a guessing game, but even if you could, does it matter? And here's what I mean, the way you need to look at it. You look at the research, we know that muscles at some point between 28 and 48 hours after you train them, depending upon a lot of factors, are going to stop growing. In other words, that muscle protein synthesis is going to return to baseline, more or less, right? We know that. Does it matter how long it lasts? Is it going to affect what you do? I don't think that it is. And here's what I would point out. Some people say, well, I want to train in such a way that's going to prolong that window as long as possible. Okay, but does that mean you're going to grow more? And here's the reason I would ask that. How do you prolong that window? Up your training volume. If you do a really, really large amount of volume of training in one session, you're probably going to extend that window out to closest to the 48 hours. But you're also going to have a longer recovery window after as well. So you're also going to have downtime to where you don't grow immediately after training. That's going to be longer while you're in the recovery phase. And it's not to say that higher volumes of training aren't generally associated with more growth. They are. But do you see the problem with that? So what are you going to do? Are you going to change? Are you going to stand there and then say, oh, well, since I know that my muscles have stopped growing at 31.5 hours, right? I'm going to adjust my diet. So I don't need the calories or the protein after that because I'm not growing. Well, you don't absorb all your food the same few hours after you eat it. So that's really irrelevant, isn't it? In fact, some of the food you ate last night is contributing to your muscle protein synthesis today because you're still absorbing some of it. Some of the protein and fats and everything else even the next day. Sometimes the day after. It's just a trickle-down effect. So why does it matter? This is where we talk about majoring in the minors and people worrying about minutia that we could argue about academically. That it would be useful to know this if you're doing a doctoral thesis. Not because it's useful to your athletes, but because it's useful for academic debate and for getting your PhD, right? Because it's a point of science. It has no real-world application to winning the NFL or setting a world record in powerlifting, right? There's no relevance to that. It's relevant to lab results and lab studies and getting your doctoral work done and getting your PhD. Not useful for the athlete to know that. This doesn't have any real-world applications. This falls under the body of general knowledge. So I would say don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It's not going to help you in any way to have the exact answer to that. Follow proven training protocols and proven nutrition protocols. All right, next question. And last question of the week. If tonnage goes down in a workout but intensity increases, will this be seen as a progress or a regression? It's a progression. You've added more weight to the bar for the same range of motion. Why would you ask that? Well, because you're going to be like, well, if tonnage went down, it's going to have less hypertrophic potential. Well, that's true, but it's going to give you some potential. I mean, you can keep the tonnage the same and the volume the same, but if you don't add any weight to the bar or increase it, you're not going to grow from it anyways. You're still going to be able to grow off of increased tension, right? And we could argue about this all day long, but this is why we periodize training. You're caught up in the novice lifter mentality still, which is fine. If you're a novice lifter, and there's a good chance you are, you need to be thinking in terms of that sort of progression and regression. As you get more advanced, you have to think in terms of periodization and flow of intensity versus training volume, which includes everything from linear periodization to concurrent periodization and how things like intensity and volume flow into each other and feed into each other correctly over time. right? That's important for more advanced lifters. So your question is really only relevant to the novice lifter, isn't it? And here's my question to the novice lifter. Why are you adjusting your tonnage anyways? You should be doing straight linear progression. You need to be focused on adding weight to the bar with the same amount of total reps and sets. If you're a more advanced lifter, you can't be worried about nonsense like this because different workouts have a different training effect, either inside of your individual days if you're doing a concurrent training, or inside of individual blocks if you're going to do like linear periodization. So this sort of mindset to think about for someone who actually needs to be adjusting intensity versus volume is going to handicap your actual results, meaning you're going to waste time worrying about crap that doesn't matter. You need to be worried about programming your training correctly, not what's a regression or a progression, right? In that regard, completely irrelevant. It's not going to serve your benefit to think of it in that way. You need to be thinking in terms of how is this going to feed my overall training? Where does this fit into all of it? All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.